Today we're going to talk about getting back to action in your eBay store, or I should say my eBay store. Then we're going to talk about the worst 5 sales and the best 5 sales from last week. But before we get into that, my name is Brian and I'm a reseller. I resell on eBay in the everything category, selling pots, pans, clothes, toys, tools, you name it. I go to garage sales, estate sales, thrift stores, and Facebook Marketplace to find things to flip on eBay for a profit. So let's get right into the details. As I was going through my numbers from last week, I started thinking about getting back into action on my eBay store, getting a regular rhythm going, getting back to a normal routine. The past few weeks have been a little bit scattered for me. I took a week off with my son up in Iowa. My wife and I did. I had July 4th week come in there, so there was a spacer week. Then July 4th week was a little bit slow and weird, and last week I had a lot of stuff going on. So there's been a few weeks in a row now that I just haven't had my normal rhythm of business on eBay. Not even on YouTube necessarily. My rhythm's just been a little bit off. So as I was working on my numbers from last week, they were better than the previous week. I was like, man, I gotta crank this back up. I gotta get back into a rhythm here of listing and selling and just everything. So I started thinking about the steps. So it always helps me to think through the steps of what do you have to do to get where you want to be. A guy I used to work for said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I do believe that, even though I'm not an amazing planner, I do believe it. So, I wrote down a little 4-step plan, and as I was writing it down, I was like, man, this isn't a whole lot different from what I talked about on Monday, planning for the previous weekend to try to get sales into my store, even though I hadn't listed a bunch of items. So I'm like, okay, so what's my plan for, to get my store back in its rhythm, get sales coming in more frequently. And the first step is to recognize that there's something wrong. And, it's easy for me to see it because I'm just looking. It might not be easy for everybody to see it when you're right in the middle of it, but I'm looking at the sales numbers going sale by sale by sale and seeing the profit margins, the number of sales coming in, and knowing where I'd like the sales to be. So I'm like, okay, I recognize I've got a deficiency here. Now what am I going to do about it? So step 1 is recognizing that there's something wrong. Step 2 is making a plan. You need to plan. I need to plan. How many listings do I want to be putting up, over the period of a week? What do I want my sell-through rate to look like? What kind of profit margins am I targeting? You got to prioritize which items you're listing. I've done it before where I was like, well, I'm just going to list the oldest stuff first because I've had it the longest, and completely pass by much, much higher value inventory that will sell faster, which whenever I say it out loud sounds ridiculous, but I've done it before. I'd be willing to bet that most resellers have done that before. Maybe not. I might be, the only one out here on an island, but I've done that before. So, because in my head, I was like, I just want to clear out the old stuff. And it just, So, make a plan. What do you want to do next? Write it down. And I have it written down. How many listings? What is my sell-through rate? What does my pricing look like? Make the plan for that. Step 3 is going to be to take action. So now I've got the plan. Now I have to execute the plan. I have to take action on the plan. I have to take the photographs, quality photographs. I have to be photographing the right items. I can't be photographing items that are, a 5% sell-through rate and worth $5 plus, shipping or free shipping on eBay. Not going to cut it. I have to be photographing the right items. I have to have them at the right price points. That doesn't mean I'm shooting at the very, very low end of the market or trying to undercut the market. That means I'm looking at what people have them listed for now, looking at the most recent comparative sales, and then putting my price right there in the middle somewhere. I usually price mine on the kind of the middle to high side. Not highest, but middle to high is where I put my prices. Then, part of that action plan is making sure that you're, and this is a me thing, so I'm not saying you have to do that, but responding to offers when people send them, whether you're countering, accepting, or declining, whatever you're doing. I very, very, very rarely decline. I respond and I'll counter sending offers whenever you have an offer eligible to send to a prospective buyer. You have to offer at least a 5% discount. I think probably everybody has room. I don't want to speak for your business, but probably everybody has room to offer a 5% discount on an item. And even if I'm looking at it as a high turn, high volume item, that if I can sell it faster and sacrifice 5%, that's faster. It's easier and faster for me to put that money to work in my business all over again. So I'm willing to do that. So all those things go into the taking action part of the sales process in your business. And then number 4 is reap the rewards. And it's not going to look exactly like that picture. But the rewards are going to come. Everything kind of happens typically in a little bit of a delayed cycle on eBay. So if you start listing a bunch of items, you don't get the sales all flooding in that exact same day necessarily, or even the next day necessarily. But usually they kind of ramp up, and then it's just like almost like a flood starts happening of sales coming in whenever you're listing mass amounts of items. The same thing happens whenever you stop listing items. It kind of trails off. You can have several good days of not listing items and have sales come in and be okay. Last week was a fairly bad week for me putting up new listings, and I still had a decent week on eBay. This week, it's trailed off a little bit. So I had a few items on Monday. Tuesday, I had 2 items that sold. And so far, it's Wednesday right now. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon. I've sold 2 items. So if I'm selling 1% of my items, I should be at about 4 per day. And right now, I'm not. So that's telling me that eBay's noticing I don't have enough listings going up, and my sales volume is starting to trail off a little bit. So those are the steps that I'm going through. Your steps may look different. I'd be interested to hear about any steps you take whenever you see your business, or you've gotten away from consistency on your business for a while and you get back to it, what you do to get back there. So mine is recognizing, first of all, that I'm not on top of my game, making a plan to get back to where I want to be, taking action on that plan, and then reaping the rewards. That's steps 1 through 4. I'll get off my soapbox now. So anytime I'm giving that kind of advice or talking about that stuff, it's really aimed back at myself. I didn't realize I'm looking into the camera, but it's really aimed back at myself, trying to work on my own business. But if there's any nuggets in there that you can use at all, please do so, and I wish you all the success in the world. Now let's get into last week's sales. Like I said, I didn't list a lot of items. I only listed 8 items last week, and that is like, ugh, that's bad. Bad. Listed 8 new items last week, but it did yield 24 sales. I got 24 sales coming in last week. So yeah, I'm not too upset about that. Probably would have had more than 24 sales if I listed more than 8 new items, but that's the way the week shook out. So I ended up with $1,081.26 in sales last week. That's comprised of $838.51 in item revenue and $242.75 in shipping revenue. Shipping is counted as revenue. So if you're a plus shipping type of seller like I am, I didn't used to think of that as revenue. I just thought of it as charged shipping, kind of off to the side. But if you think about people who sell everything as free shipping, their shipping's built in, it's part of the revenue model. So it is part of your revenue. My net pre-tax profit after all of the cost of goods, platform fees, advertising fees, discount fee, just everything all rolled in, I made $499.70 of pre-tax profit, which was a 46% profit margin, which I'm stoked about. It's still 1 point ahead of my profit margin goal of 45% right now. So I know that things are still ticking along the way they should be. I had a few weeks there where it was like 50 plus, and I dipped below that, but I'm still happy with 46% profit margin. Somebody did ask me why, in a comment, why I care about profit margin versus profit dollars. And I struggled with this myself whenever I was in a sales position in a company because it was, whenever I was selling things, we had to be at certain profit margin goals. And I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I can put $50 more worth of stuff on the truck. What does it matter? The truck's already going there. All the stuff's happening already. What does it matter what the profit margin is? And, it took me a while to figure it out that it was draining resources. There's extra weight in the truck. It's taking extra gas. There's all these extra things, more touches, all these extra things that happen. And if you're not hitting that profit margin, it's not worth selling the item, which as a salesperson sounded weird to me, but I finally figured it out. So profit margin for me, if I was trying to make $100, you might have to invest $400 in an item to make 100 and sell it for 500. Where, if you have a 20% profit margin, then that's a 20% profit margin. If you buy it for $4, sell it for $5, and $100 is your profit, that's a 20% profit margin. So if I say, hey, I want to make a 50% profit margin, that means if I'm selling something for $5, I'm only investing $250. Half, 50% of that $500 is my profit margin. It means I invested less. I could deploy my capital in other places and be making more and more and more of my money. So it's just, how fast do you need a return on cash? And if you got millions and millions of dollars laying around and you can just take the 20% profit margin, good for you. That's not me. So, and that's not where that person was coming from. But they were just asking me why I talked about that and seemed to place importance on profit margin. And that's why. That's really a holdover from my professional sales background. Yeah. The number one source of profit last week was garage sales. Second week in a row, it was garage sales. 6 items drove 34% of the profit last week. There wasn't a blowout anywhere. It was kind of even across the board in a few different categories. But 34% of the profit was driven by garage sale purchases. I had 12 items, or 50% of the items sold that were promoted. Sold on a promoted listing. All my items are promoted, but these specifically sold off a promoted listing. I do promote my listings generally at either 2, 3, or 5%. 2 or 3 is usually on kind of faster moving, higher turn items. 5% is if it's a very saturated category like clothing and some cookware. I'll do it 5%. But yeah, so 2, 3, and 5 is typically where I'm promoting. On offers, 17 of the items sold, or 71%, were sold on offers or discounts. So I did have a store discount on clothing, on coffee and souvenir mugs, and on a few other items running this past Thursday morning through Sunday night. That's why that number's so high. 71% of items sold on an offer or a discount. It's pretty high. And then double dips, I had 8 items, or 33% of the items sold on a double dip, which means they were sold on a promoted listing and either an offer or a store discount. So they got hit 2 times with different fees on top of the platform fees, which is fine. I have that built in. I ran that, last week and still managed to come out with a 46% profit margin for the week. Perfectly happy with that. All right, now that we got all the big stats out of the way, let's get into the details and take a look first at the worst 5 items from last week. This is the part where we just got to rip that Band-Aid off. Good news, I didn't lose any money on anything. I had 1 item I sold that was a personal item that I zero out my profit on personal items because I'm selling them at a loss. So it was a brand new personal item, but I sold it for less than I paid for it, and my profit was way less than what I paid for it. So I zero out the profit on those. So we're going to look at the worst 5 sales from last week. And the 5th worst sale are these Wrangler competition jeans. I picked these up because the competition series, sells a little bit better than normal Wranglers, but the size, it was an odd size, and there was very few of them available, and the sell rate was somewhere around 75% sell-through rate on that size range, and picked them up at Goodwill for $10.50. Sold them on a store discount for $20.92 for a $7.41 pre-tax profit, or a 24% profit margin. Not upset about that. Only had them in stock for maybe about 30 days, maybe. The fourth worst sale of the week is this Philadelphia Eagles. This is the throwback mascot logo on this hat. I picked it up at Goodwill for $4.31. Sold it on sale. Hats were on sale too. So sold it on sale for $13.10 for a $6.51 pre-tax profit, or a 32% profit margin. If I can run something at 30% off and still make a 25 to 30-ish% profit margin, I'm happy with that for sure. Let's look here. The third worst sale is this Federal Housewares. This is a little pitcher, has the plunger in it to mix up lemonade or tea or something like that if you're adding sweetener or mix or whatever to it. It's a vintage piece. I sold one within the last 90 days. Sold it pretty fast. Picked up the second one. It got lumped into the mugs and pitchers, I guess, category and was on sale. I didn't realize it, but I picked it up for $1. Sold it for $9.02 plus shipping at a big church garage sale, and made a pre-tax profit of $5.20, or 27% profit margin. It was really interesting because they had certain prices on certain things, like on clothes, on a board up front when you walked in there, and then everything else that just says make a fair offer on the stuff you want to buy. And then we were walking up and I saw the guy do this. There was a guy up front, and you'd set all your stuff down, and I saw him do it to somebody else, set all their stuff down. He just looked at their pile, and before they could say anything, he goes, give me $25. And I was like, that's not the person making an offer. That's how do you know they weren't gonna feel like they wanted to pay $40? And so he goes, give me $25. And I was like, that was weird. And it was about 30 minutes later, I had all my stuff together. My wife and I walked up, set our stuff down, and it was the same guy. And he looked at the pile and goes, give me $25. And I was looking at it, and I was like, what am I going to do? Stand here and like bargain with the guy at the church sale? It's like, nah, it's okay. I gave him the $25, walked out, and my wife goes, I've never seen that before. I was like, yeah, it was pretty different. And she goes, was that good or bad? I said, we'll make money, but it's not going to be as much. And she goes, what did you want to pay? I said, I wanted to pay like $15. And she's like, oh, huh. And it was in my head, I was like, man, we should have grabbed an extra 4 or 5 things, because I still think we would have paid $25. Whatever. Sold the pitcher. So $5.20 of my $25 is back in my pocket now. All right, the second worst sale of the week is this souvenir mug. It's a Wilton mug. It's like a real heavy aluminum. It's the Wilton Brass Company, but this isn't a brass mug. It's a forged piece from Colorado, Georgetown, Colorado, Centennial Celebration mug with the papers in it. It's a pretty cool piece, but I picked this up at an estate sale here locally for 20 cents. Last fall, I bought like 25 or 30 mugs, coffee mugs, souvenir mugs, all that sort of stuff from one estate sale because they had them 5 for $1. And so picked these up, 20 cents a piece. I sold it for $6.92 on that 30% off sale, plus shipping, for a $4.57 pre-tax profit, or a 34% profit margin. I've sold, I don't know, probably about 12 to 15, I think, of those souvenir mugs, and I still have, I don't know, I've got probably 15 or 18 left, something like that. So, and then the worst sale of the week, this one was a little bit of a shocker. This is a Lincoln welding, it's called a welding jacket, but it's more like a heavy shirt. It's a real heavy cotton. It's not like a thick, heavy, like jean jacket heavy type thing. It's more like a lighter weight welding jacket. Paid $10 for it from a garage sale. Sold it for $17.42 plus shipping on the 30% off sale for a $1.15 pre-tax profit, or a 5% profit margin. This one was unfortunate. I didn't consider the weight of it because it was a heavier shirt that I needed to charge more for shipping, and I charged normal shirt pricing shipping, and I needed to charge like jeans shipping. So I lost a little bit on the shipping on that one. It's kind of a bummer, but That's the way that goes. And that was it. So that was I did get my money back plus $1.15, and those were the worst 5 sales from last week. Now we can take a look at the best five sales from last week. There's some cool stuff in here. There's an item in here that's just shocked the heck out of me. We'll get to it in a minute, and I'll tell you why. But let's look at the fifth best sale from last week are these Ariat work boots I picked up at a garage sale here locally for $40. They had them listed at $50. They were brand new in the box. I looked them up on eBay and I saw them selling anywhere between $90 and $100. So I offered $40. The lady called her husband, and luckily they took it, and I was excited to get them. I actually had one of my sons try them on first because I thought he might want them, and he's like, I just don't like the way they feel. So put them back in the box, got them listed up, sold them pretty fast for $90 plus shipping for a $38.13 pre-tax profit or a 37% profit margin. But yeah, got them sold at a 37% profit margin on an offer a customer sent to me. So glad to have those out the door. And then the fourth best sale of the week is this Bogan, and I'm going to say Manfrotto in air quotes because I don't think Manfrotto owned them yet, or maybe they owned them and didn't have their name on it. But every listing I saw for this exact tripod, I mean this exact one, I looked at all their pictures, said Bogan Manfrotto, so there must have been an acquisition at some point. But I picked it up at an estate sale for $5. They didn't have it priced. It was sitting next to a big video camera that I didn't want, and I asked about it, and they said, how about $5 for that? I took it, got it listed up for $59.89 plus shipping, and sold it. It's been about 6 to 8 weeks. So that's a good one. $42.91 pre-tax profit or a 58% profit margin. That was a heavy tripod. That thing was very substantial. And then number 3, the third best sale from last week. This one's funny to me because I went on a spree last fall buying a bunch of summer/fall stuff from Ross to try to retail arbitrage it, and didn't have enough room on price, waited too long to list the items. They got flooded on eBay, all sorts of things. So I got stuck with I stuck myself with a lot of items that are super low margin, items I lost money on selling, just try to clear them out. And I still have more of them. Hats, some socks, just all sorts of stuff to still sell through. But I picked these Salomon Speedcross trail running shoes up whenever my wife and I were up in Iowa, popped into a Ross. I found these on clearance for $20 plus tax in a big size, or size 14. And I was like, this might actually have some value. Salomon's a high-end brand, so I looked them up. The exact same, shoe and colorway had sold once in the previous 90 days. There was none listed. I was like, I'm going to do it. So bought them, brought them home, pictured them up, got them sold in about 2 to 3 weeks. So pretty quick. They went through the authentication process, which means I didn't pay for the shipping, the buyer did. And I didn't get charged for the authentication shipping. So yeah, picked them up for $22 including tax, sold them for $75.91 on an offer. That's an offer I sent out to a prospective buyer. Made $43.12 of pre-tax profit for a 57% profit margin. That was a good sale. I can't think of, there's been plenty of times where I've had Ross items in the worst 5. I don't know that I've had any Ross items in the top 5 before, but buying that one, I knew it was going to work out and it was going to sell. Just wasn't sure exactly how long it was going to take, but it didn't take long at all. So that was good. Then moving into the second best sale of the week are these Adams Idea irons with the Senior Flex shaft. I picked up at a garage sale for $10 for the set. It was a 5 through pitching wood set. It was a smoking deal, really was. Had them listed, I think, for like $129 or $149, somewhere in there, and sent offers out on them as I saw prospective buyers were getting towards the end of the golf season for most of the country, and I wanted to have that set gone. I've got a couple individual drivers that are very low value, but I wanted to have these gone. So sent some aggressive offers, sent one out for $100.43 plus shipping, and they sold. So that's a $71.65 pre-tax profit, or a 62% profit margin on what I deem like a closeout price on a set of irons. So it really, that buy cost helped a lot, picking them up for $10. And then the best sale of the week, if you would have asked me if one of the best sale you'd have all week was a belt buckle, I would have said you're a liar, but it happened. This scuba diving belt buckle was a really cool piece I picked up at an estate sale. I went in on 50% off day. It was marked 8, picked it up for $4. I have another scuba diver belt buckle in my store as well. It's a simpler pattern, but it still has the 3D like raised design on it. It's really cool. But picked this one up for $4. It was a limited edition, solid brass, and sold it to a gentleman in China. So it's on its way over there now. It's probably sitting in Illinois somewhere right now getting checked out. Make sure I'm not smuggling anything in the box, and then it's off to China. So I picked it up for $4. I sold it for $89.89, which when I saw that value, just my jaw dropped. It's crazy. Made a $75.46 pre-tax profit, or a 77% profit margin, which I think is a great way to finish with the best sale of a week. Is 77% profit margin. Just poof, that's awesome. It's really awesome. Oh man, but glad to have that one go out the door. It's funny, a guy I used to work with, he saw the video, the short video of me talking about it, and he messaged me, he goes, "Why didn't you tell me about that belt buckle?" Because he scuba dives, and honestly, if I had put a little more thought into it, I probably would have messaged him and said, "Do you want to buy this belt buckle before I get it listed?" And I just didn't. So Steven, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. But yeah, that's it for this week. It was overall, it was a good week. Sold 24 items, only having listed 8 items. I can't complain about that. If I had sold 1% of my inventory throughout the week, I would have been at about 28 to 29 items for the week. And coming up at 24, it still feels like a win considering the amount of work I had put into my store last week. So I'll take it. If you've stuck around this long, I truly appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments or questions, leave those down in the comments section. I'll make sure and get back to you right away. And until next time, have a great day.